Soon, let's get to our panel of politicians, Labor MP Graham Perrett and Liberal MP Kelly O'Dwyer this morning. Good morning to you both. Bit of disappointment in the pool, Graham, but it looks like, according to the carbon tax poll and the Nielsen, for you guys, for the Labor Party, while the primary vote's still very low, it seems less people worried that it's going to affect them adversely.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the reality that we always knew would eventuate, and obviously the hyperbole from those that opposed it has been shown to be just that. Obviously a lot of work to go in terms of convincing Australians, particularly those people that have gone over to the Liberal Party, why they should vote Labor, but this is certainly one step in that journey towards convincing Australians of the right way to go.
Isn't it too early, though, Graham, to be suggesting that this has been the debate that people now realise, or as you put it, that it was hyperbole?
Well, it's just look, you know, segueing from that swimming story, I'm never one to celebrate anything until after the event. And look, the reality is we've got a long way to go to convince Australians about the positive plans that we have. The reality is we needed to put a price on carbon pollution. I mean, Tony Abbott agrees with that, even though it's not, you know, front and centre in his newsletters. The reality is every right-thinking Australian agrees that we need to change our economy in a gentle way, not like those, you know, the extreme ways of people that want to shut down coal-fired power stations. We've got a gentle way to change our economy so that we're prepared for the future, and this is, you know, putting the price from the 1st of July was the start of that process.
Kelly O'Dwyer, are the fears not being realised here?
Well, look, I don't know that Graham can take too much comfort from these polls because, as we know, it's pretty much a statistical error. And what is clear is that even in just 4 weeks, we have seen even more confusion with the carbon tax. 25 councils have now been added to the list that previously weren't on the list, so more and more people are going to be paying it. Most individuals still don't understand the very real impact that it will have on them as it flows through the economy. So I think there is huge confusion. The government has done nothing to clear this confusion. And if you want to talk about polls, most Australians oppose a carbon tax. Most Australians agree with the Productivity Commission. They can't understand why it is that Australians are paying the biggest carbon tax in the world. And even so, we are still going to be increasing our carbon emissions by 2020 from 578 million tonnes to 621 million tonnes. Well, and again, if you want to look at the polling, Kieran, most Australians actually prefer Kevin Rudd to Julia Gillard, and I'm not quite sure what Graham thinks of that, but maybe he can let us know whether he's in the Kevin Rudd or Julia Gillard camp.
I will get to that in a moment, Kelly, but I want to just get your thoughts on this specific number that now feel that they won't be worse off. It's changed in a month, and it wasn't within the margin of error. This is a significant shift, a 10-point shift from 51% feeling they would be worse off just a month ago to now 38%. That's well outside the margin of error.
Well, look, I actually think let's look at this over the coming months, Kieran, because the impact that will flow through the economy is very significant. And I don't think that we can take terribly much comfort from the assurances of a Labor Prime Minister and a Labor government that promised before the last election it wouldn't be introducing a carbon tax, but in fact it did, breaking its promise days after because it formed a coalition with the Greens. Now they're trying to tell everybody that everything's all right. We know that's simply not the case. And I think if you actually ask most small businesses,
Kelly, we don't
if you ask
those polls.
if you just let me finish, if you ask small business people, if you ask hospitals who are bearing the cost of this, that will then flow through to people who are actually receiving those services, you'll know that the impact is very severe.
Okay. Well, Graham, I know the Prime Minister is on holiday this week, probably a good time to take it with the Olympics dominating so much attention, but when Parliament returns in a fortnight, if the polls continue as they are, attention will turn again inevitably to these numbers that Kelly referred to. The Nielsen poll has Kevin Rudd where he has been for a while now, the preferred Labor leader, 60 to 31%, twice as popular, and even over Tony Abbott. I think it was 57 to 36% preferred PM Rudd over Abbott. So this is going to occupy the minds of a lot of your nervous colleagues.
Well, I tend to disagree with you on this, Kieran. It'll occupy the second floor of the Senate side of the Parliament. That's where the media is. The caucus is actually focused on the next election and selling our message. Now, Kelly's leader says that the next election will be a referendum on pricing pollution. That's something I'm happy to go to the next election on. That's something I care passionately about, like most Australians who have children or grandchildren know that we've got to prepare the economy for the future. The caucus will be focused on that. Kevin Rudd, my next door neighbour here in Brisbane, is on the record as saying he's not going to challenge again, and that more than that, he's actually going to go into bat for the Prime Minister, the duly elected member of the caucus, Julia Gillard, who's having a well-earned break at the moment. So that's what we're focused on. Obviously the media and Kelly will be a little bit disturbed by her leader's figures, as they should be. We'll focus on selling our message and, as I said, pricing pollution through the mechanism that we have is a great step towards setting our economy up for the future.
Well, that's certainly a half-glass full look at things, Graham. To be honest, it's not just the media, as you know. There's a lot within the Labor Party who are focusing on this as well.
Well, there's a few, I hear of a few names, but the reality is they do not have anything except themselves to blame from this. The reality is we've got a leader that came through a vote, overwhelmingly so, with the majority of the caucus, and I know people think that there's people out there doing the numbers. It's certainly not. They're not calling me, I can tell you that. I'm in my electorate trying to sell our message. That's what I'll be doing today
so
and every day until the close of polls. Rock solid, welded on, welded on.
Kelly O'Dwyer, let's look at Tony Abbott, 57-36, Rudd over Abbott. Mr Abbott's disapproval rating 56%, dead heat with Julia Gillard. This is an extraordinary number, isn't it, when you look at how popular your party is generally?
Well, look, there's no doubt Tony has been a very, very effective opposition leader, and he has done a tremendous job in holding this government to account. The only poll really that counts, Kieran, is the poll that's taken on election day, and that's the day that we're focused on. We'll continue to hold the government to account. Tony will continue to lead a very strong and united team that is focusing on the real challenges that face Australians, not only in the coming months but in the coming years and decades ahead. That's the job that we're focused on. We believe it's important to restore good, strong economic management to this country. This is something that this government has failed abysmally at.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be back on AM Agenda. Stay with us this Monday morning. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for being with us this morning. My guests, Graham Perrett and Kelly O'Dwyer. Kelly, the LNP had its pre-selection vote in the seat of Fisher, Peter Slipper's seat. Mal Brough has won it in a canter. Didn't even have to go to a second vote, despite the controversy around his involvement in that Slipper case. As someone said today, one of the front benchers in the Liberal Party said that Mal Brough now goes to the back of the line when it comes to ministerial positions. What do you think?
Well, I think that Mal Brough is someone who has tremendous experience, and we certainly welcome him to the coalition team again. He was a formidable minister in the last government, and I'm sure he'll make a very significant contribution. I don't have any great insights into who gets appointed to various positions on the front bench team. I'm on the back bench, but I know that Mal will make a very significant contribution.
You're on the back bench, but a lot of people think you should get a promotion. You're one of a number of the next generation people who Tony Abbott's under pressure to promote. Do you think Mal Brough should go to the back of the queue now? He's been out of the game for 5 years, as one of your coalition colleagues said.
Well, you're very kind, Kieran. I'm not going to bite on that. It's simply not a decision. It's simply not a decision for me. It's not a decision for anyone on the backbench. It's a decision for the leadership and the leadership group, and I know in their great wisdom they'll make very sensible decisions. What about James McGrath? He was the architect of that Campbell Newman victory in Queensland, seemed to have some high-level support himself. Some of your own colleagues spoke out publicly in his favour. Jamie Briggs and Simon Birmingham. He was close to Malcolm Turnbull as well, but didn't get across the line.
What do you put that down to? Why did he take on Mal Brough when he knew that it was going to be such a tough battle?
Well, unlike the Labor Party, we don't believe in stitching up our pre-selections, and we don't believe that they're sinecures for particular individuals who've served in particular unions. We believe in a very strong and open democratic system, and we believe that competition means that we get the absolute best talent that we can for our team. So we think it's terrific that we've had so many very strong candidates put their names forward. James is somebody who is indeed very talented, who has a very big future in the Liberal Party, and we look forward to the contribution that he might make in the years to come.
Well, they are both strong candidates, Graham Perrott. It shows the level of interest there is in the coalition ranks to be a part of this. We saw that with Porter, the WA Treasurer, as well, putting his hand up.
Yeah, look, obviously that pre-selection process, it continues that Liberal National Party story here in Queensland, I guess. I mean, getting the old team back together. You got Gambaro, Ench, Vasta, now Brough. It's that LNP view of the world, I suppose, you know, both eyes in the rear vision mirror, stick the car in reverse, go backwards as quickly as you can, take off the smart state number plates.
Prefer to go back to the Howard government years.
Yeah, keep going, Kelly, keep going. I'd like to think that there would be a vision for the future. That's what we're about. We're a party of reform. It's, you know, we believe in NBN, pricing pollution, doing all those things for the future generations, not just, you know, going full speed into the past. You know, I think we've even got Clive Palmer, you know, one from the old Joe days, coming back up in Kennedy, putting his hand up for Kennedy. Well, that's what he said he'd do. So it'll be great to see what transpires and how they transform the Queensland of today to the one that I grew up in the 70s and 80s.
All right, let's move on from Palmer to actually some policy and the National Disability Insurance Scheme. The Prime Minister had a win there, Kelly, on Friday. The two big states agreeing to be a part of it, or at least the popular states, New South Wales, Victoria, and both Conservative. This was a win to get them on board with your Premier in Victoria as well, Ted Baillieu.
Well, I wish I could agree with you there, Kieran. Unfortunately, though, there are many unanswered questions. We all agree that it's important to implement a National Disability Insurance Scheme, but so far the Prime Minister of this country has actually shortchanged that scheme by upwards of $2.9 billion. We simply do not know how it is going to be funded. The Productivity Commission was very, very clear in its report. It said it needed to come from Commonwealth General Government revenue. Now, the Prime Minister has simply tried to point the finger at the states and tell the states to stump up. We know that this is not going to deliver a long-term sustainable scheme if it's simply
Kelly,
going to be a blame game. If it's simply going to be a blame game, Kieran.
You're talking about the longer-term
funding.
What I'm talking about in the initial term is the trial. That's what trials are about, to set up a framework, see what works,
money on the
see
table.
what doesn't.
But let me say this to you, Kieran. I mean, there is no great long-term benefit if the trial comes to nothing. I mean, we're about, you know, I know the Prime Minister loves to concentrate on today and the next media cycle. She doesn't have a long-term vision, but we actually believe it is absolutely wrong to try and raise the hopes of people within the disability community who have actually been struggling with this problem for many, many years now, and to provide them with a false hope, a false dawn on this issue. If in fact the entire scheme can't be funded.
Why can't you have a trial to see what works, and then you formulate the funding? Wasn't it a bit rich to say, OK, here's a levy idea over a glass of red wine at the Lodge? The Prime Minister would agree to it.
Look, a trial is one thing. We believe, though, in properly funding the entire scheme. And Tony Abbott has been very constructive here, very, very constructive here. He has actually said to the Prime Minister, written to her and said, we are happy to work on this in a bipartisan way, a joint select committee to look at how we can fund this long term. He has been rejected. Now, you know, they like to talk about working in a bipartisan manner. We have put our hand out. We have said to them we are happy to work with the government on this issue to try and find a long-term way of ensuring long-term funding, and yet they've rejected it.
Let's go to Graham, because that is true. Tony Abbott offered the bipartisan approach. It was not taken up, and that could have circumvented this, couldn't it?
Well, perhaps. I mean, he seemed to jump about a bit. I mean, he started with no. That was his, that's always his starting position, obviously.
And I don't think that's right. I can't pick up on that. I think that they've always been supportive of the disability scheme.
The $1 billion that we have on the table right now is what a good government does. You have a trial, and that's what I'm so glad that nearly every state and territory, Queensland aside, have signed up to have a go and see what works. And Queensland really has to step up here, because the reality is that for every $10 that someone with a disability has in Victoria, Queenslanders get $7. So the states and federal government have always worked in disability. Kelly would know that. Anyone that's worked in that area would know that. So whilst there is there's one recommendation, the reality is that we're a Commonwealth, we're states and territories, and the Commonwealth need to work together on this. And I commend the Victorian and New South Wales premiers for stepping up to have a go.
They already commit billions of dollars to disability funding, though, Graham. This is something the Prime Minister didn't talk about. She was quite dishonest. They commit billions of dollars to disability funding.
Kelly.
And she pretended that somehow the states weren't making a contribution. This is a different approach to it entirely, as
Let's hear Graham's response quickly, Graham. Your response quickly to that.
This is a different approach entirely, rather than just the ad hoc, where it's a bit of a lottery, depending on whether you've had an accident at work or an accident in a car. It's all over the shop. So the reality is we need to have a national scheme. That's what we need to do.
We've got 2 minutes left on the show. I want to look at the asylum issue. That's one area where you haven't compromised, Kelly. This has been, we've seen the record number of asylum arrivals in 1 year, and we're only in July. Why doesn't the coalition now say, OK, it is time to give a bit as well? The government said it would open Nauru. Try both. Try anything.
Well, in the last week we've seen 523 people arrive by boat illegally. That is more than the number of people who arrived in the last 6 years of the coalition government. I mean, since August of 2008, since they actually dismantled a scheme that worked, a border protection scheme that worked, we've seen more than 20,000 people arrive. The compromise is there to be done between the Labor Party and the Greens. They're in coalition government together. We have put forward a solution, a workable solution. We've said return to temporary protection visas and offshore processing, and turning boats around when it's safe to do so. We're very happy to support that. The government simply needs to put the bill through, on that basis, and we'll support it.
Graham, doesn't it get to the point where you think the government... I'm sorry, we've only got a minute left, but it gets to the point where the government thinks you've got to do something, Kieran.
And look, I'm terrified, because the reality is that 1 in 20 of those people that get in boats statistically will drown. So that is on my conscience, on Kelly's conscience, on our leaders' conscience, and we do need to shake things up a bit. So that's why hopefully Angus Houston's panel and the backbench group will be able to come up with a plan that hopefully Tony Abbott will strip the politics out and do something that will stop kids from drowning.
Well, it's politics, tragically, on all sides. I think that that is right across the board, that blame. But anyway, Graham, Kelly, I appreciate your time this Monday morning. Thanks for being there.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks, Graham.
And that's all for AIM Agenda. Thank you for your company as well. The news is next.